Hello and welcome back to Fish Bites. It's January 25th, 2022, and I've been continuing to work on the sound features of Fish Bites. In the previous video, we showed that the fish that would swim through the listening circle would send back notes to the sound player based on how fast they were traveling. What we're going to show today is that I've added to that, so now the fish also show not just the tempo, not just their speed influencing the tempo of the notes they're sending, but also now it's going to include a pitch, like what note the fish is playing. And that's going to be based on the color of the fish. So fish of similar colors are going to play the same note. But not just any note, the note's also affected by the size of the fish. So if the fish is very large, near 25% of its maximum size possible, it'll play back the lowest. It'll play back that note, but in a very low octave. And then for the next three quartiles of the possible sizes of these fish, we will get higher and higher octaves. So the tiniest fish that's a baby will be playing in the highest possible octave of that note for that color of fish. So I'm gonna demo that all here in a second. But before I do that, I wanted to kind of interject that as I was running some tests here and running this simulation, I found a very interesting effect I've rarely ever seen this. The blue fish that I've selected here in the center of the screen is very old. He's 229 seconds old, which he was considered old when he was 40 seconds old. He's 229 seconds old. He's lived way longer than I thought possible. And not only that, he's surviving because he's eating like crazy. He's an eating machine. So it just so happens because there are 50 some fish on the screen, he appears to have plenty of victims available to him. So if we watch him a little bit here, he's almost taken on a very predator kind of position where he's really gobbling up these little fish fast enough to keep his energy up. I mean, his energy right now is 76%. After that meet, he's up to 77%. So he's doing quite well, staying alive. Of course, once he gets older, once he's considered an old fish, he burns his energy up faster and faster the older he gets. So it gets harder and harder to stay alive. But he is still just, his energy is 85%. And that's one of his kids right there that he just went past. Here's another one of his kids. But yeah, he's able to eat up a lot of these little fish, and he's doing quite well. So we'll see how long he lives. But let me go ahead and turn the sound on here so you can hear the pitch variation. There's only two or three different kinds of fish here, so you're not going to hear a lot of pitch variation at this point. But you will hear some. Turn the speakers on here. I'm turning on my speakers here so I can hear what you guys are hearing. All right, so there you go. Actually, what you're hearing is coming through my speakers and from the system, so that's probably not so good. Let me turn down the speaker microphone a little bit. All right, so that's probably a little better. We're still following this fish around, but you'll notice there's a very faint circle that this guy's kind of going around. It's in the center of the screen here. In fact, if I unclick him, I'll go back to see the whole screen. You can see there's a light blue circle around there. That's the listening circle. So any fish swimming in that listening circle is going to be sending a note to the sound player. And so you hear the rhythm, but you also hear a few different notes, and of course different octaves. A big fish in there is really rocking my subwoofer, and the little fish are doing much higher notes. I'm going to change one thing here to bump them up to a higher octave so you can hear what the next. If I move everything up one octave, what does that sound like? Let's give that a try. Actually, why don't I show you how I do that? I'm going to go into my global data where I've got this octave start index. So 0 is as low as it can go of the different octaves that are available. I'm going to bump it up to 1. So everything's going to be an octave higher, but only the newest fish are going to shift An old fish that's not growing anymore, once the fish is done growing, it doesn't revamp its note anymore, because it's in the octave it's going to stay at for the rest of its life. So I'm not going to get any change from the old fish here, I'm afraid. But maybe we'll get a few little changes from the new fish. So once I change that value, and then I go back to unpause it here, I need to actually send all that information, apply the changes that I've made to the variables there, to the static variables. So at this point, what should happen is any baby fish that are formed or fish that are growing, I think are going to be playing in a higher octave. So let's see if we hear some higher notes here. There's a high clicker. I think that's one of the higher octaves that we're hearing there. Anyway, let's give it a try with a brand new simulation to see what the colors look like. First, let me check on our super shark here. 278 seconds, and his energy is still 96. He's like just living forever. It's pretty amazing. But let's restart the simulation, and so we can hear what a more mixture of fish of different colors will sound like. So we'll try to restart it here within the the app's still running. Be sure that still works. All right, looks good. So one thing you'll notice is when you first start a simulation, you don't hear the notes of all the fish that are in the listener, and here's why: because it starts sending notes to the listener when the fish enters the collider for the first time, and I don't think being created in the collider counts as a collision. So it waits for fish that are outside the circle to enter the circle, then those fish start broadcasting notes. So I think that's why we're not really hearing any notes here. Let's go back and listen. Yeah, I'm not hearing as many. Each fish should be making a note. I'm not hearing enough notes to account for that. But as new fish enter for the first time, they'll start sending notes. So we should be hearing like 5 different notes, but a variety of different octaves. Oh, I think we're still hearing the high octave too, based on our change. Yeah, so I'm trying to decide what I like better. I like the real low from the lowest octave I get from the biggest fish. But I also like the little bubble sound that you get from the very top. So yeah, so my sound here is kind of a bubbly sound, not very musical, kind of a bubbly sound. I might try another sound or two just to experiment with, to see if I can get something to sound more musical, like the pluck of a guitar, or a bell, or a xylophone or something like that. It might kind of sound bubble-like, but still be more musical. So that's that. I could I'll go into a little bit of information about how this works, but I'll pause the video here for now. I will say one more thing about the results here, though, before we go into the code and how this was accomplished. But I was hoping it would be more musical, and I realize it's a bit less musical than I hoped it would be. Maybe partly the sound is not that musical because it doesn't carry the tone long enough to really hear what the tone is. So you're not really hearing the chords. But the other problem is when the notes start is always all the notes play on a tick, kind of on a beat in a sense, but they're not playing. I kind of want the bass notes to play like every half note, and kind of on a beat, and quarter notes. I'm having trouble explaining it here, but in a way so that like the 16th notes can play any tick, obviously. 8th notes would only play on every other tick. It would never play on an off tick, and then quarter notes would play every 4th tick, and not anywhere in between. That would create much more of a rhythmic beat of like a song. So I might try to modify things so that notes will always fall kind of on a beat you might expect. to get some more a rhythm that's more consistent and musical, but also I think a longer sounding notes, maybe like a wind chime bell or something might be better. And just for the heck of it, if I turn the time scale up, you hear the rhythm of the speed will change and go up quite a bit. I think you're able to make some more, hear some more rhythms and patterns coming out at this speed. Sounds like a horse galloping almost. Some of the higher notes. Let's go full speed. Sounds like applause. And I've also added, just for my information, simulation length now is shown in the bottom left corner. But of course, the simulation length is the logical simulation length. So if you slow the timescale down below full speed, the simulation length will also count up more slowly. So, interesting. Now we see a redfish species kind of appearing, be very strong, and a purple fish appearing very strong. The other fish are having more trouble. The big blue fishes are not holding out as well. So, anyway, I'm going to stop it here, and we'll talk about the code here a little bit. See how this was all done. So adding pitch variation based on fish color was not all that difficult code-wise. You'll notice here in the start script of in the start method of the fish script, I've just got this call here at the end: base pitch equals set base pitch. What does that mean? Well, the base pitch is what's the basic pitch going to be for this particular color of fish. So how we set the base fish is pretty simple, just a few if statements. Looking at the hue, which is a value between 0 and 1, and you take that the range from 0 to 1 divided in 5 equal pieces. That's 0.2 width for each section there. So between but I wanted to cut it at a half and not cut it at 0. So actually you'll notice that if it's less than 10 or greater than 0.9, we get this value of 0.8. I think those are the red colored fish, I believe, most reddish colored fish. And then after that, then the next 20% goes to this float. Then we have this float and this float. So a float of 1 right here means this the pitch is going to be the same pitch of the audio clip. That's going to essentially be your C note if we're talking about an A minor 7 here, where this lowest note here would be the A note. The 1 would be essentially like the C note. 1.25, raise a pitch by 1.25, and you raise it to the major third, which would be an E major, an E natural. And then you raise a C 1.5, raise the frequency 1.5. In other words, raise it 150%, and you get to the fifth of the C scale, which is a G natural. Then the last one here is the B natural, which actually would be above the G, but kind of doesn't matter in this situation. Okay, so actually maybe I could do that to prevent that low B from sounding. That's a good idea, actually. I should change that. But anyway, once the base pitch is set for each fish, then it's pretty straightforward from that point. Let's see here. Every time the growth function happens, whenever the fish grows a little bit, well, maybe it's grown from the smaller fish to a bigger fish, so it's going to need a lower octave. So how's that taken care of? Well, in the growth function, when something does grow, it calls the reset fish size variables method. And in that, I call the method set pitch using size. So set pitch using size is quite simple. It sets the octave index. What is the octave index? We'll talk about that in a second. That basically points to what octave it's going to be. And it does that using the set octave script down here, which is very similar to what we saw a second ago, but now in terms of the octaves. We're looking at the current fish size and comparing it to the fish gene's max width. So the max width of this fish is given by this fish gene that it has. But we're going to look at what happens when the fish is in the lowest 25% of that possible size fish. In that case, it's going to take the octaves, the start octave that's given by here, the static, and add 3 to it. For the next 25% of the fish range, the next bigger fish, it'll be an octave of only 2. And then the next will be an octave of only 1. And then the largest 25% of fish will have an octave of 0. That's going to make it the lowest possible octave. So it's a little opposite. A bigger fish means a smaller octave or lower octave, because a lower octave corresponds to 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's the index pointing to an array. So let's take a look at what that array looks like. So here's our array, our octave shift array, what those numbers correspond to. So if the octave shift, if the index is 0, then it's going to take the frequency of the audio clip and reduce it to 0.125. That lowers it essentially 3 octaves. The first index would lower it 2 octaves. Cutting it in half would lower it 1 octave. This would be the real pitch of the clip itself. Multiplying by 2 raises it an octave. Multiplying it by 4 raises it 2 octaves. So it's actually kind of powers of 2, if you'll notice that. This is 2 squared, 2 to the first, 2 to the 0, 2 to the half, 2 to the 1/4, and this is 2 to the 1/8 power. So that's maybe more math than you wanted, but I've got some background in teaching math, so I get jazzed about that kind of stuff. All right, so where were we? So once we return the octave index based on the size of the fish, then we're ready to set the pitch value. The pitch for this fish is going to be the base pitch, which is what note it is, times the octave shift, which is going to put it in the correct octave. So that's all good. And then you've got the next part where it's send note to one shot. And notice now we're sending the pitch value as the pitch for that note, and then the note plays. So that's how we take care of that. So it wasn't too bad, but I do think I want to change that fish, that base note there, so that the B note, where was it at here? So that the B note is not really down between the A and C. I want the lowest B to be higher, because a low B note played alongside a low A note would really, really clash in the bass. So to have a more open sounding chord, I really want that B to be higher. So how can we do that? Probably the easiest way would be to take this guy right here and just multiply it by 2F. That'll raise the octave of that B. Doesn't matter what color B is or what color any of these are, really. I think that'll make a nicer effect there. So we won't have that low B booming around down there. All right, so let's take a few more minutes just to listen to some fish swim by, and then we'll call it for the day. So to finish up the video here, I thought I would just leave you with some fish music to watch here. I'm going to probably zoom in a little bit on the sound listener. I'm going to mute my mic so you can hear just the clear sound of the fish talking to us. So I hope you enjoy.